their regular meeting of Wednesday, September 25th, 2013. So what I'd like to do now is go into the regular meeting agenda, and the first part of this is the board reports. Mr. General Manager, are you ready to go here?
Well, if you'd like to do the board committee reports first.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We
Usually
usually have the other way
order
around. So
so-
let's do the committee report or the board report first off. So first off, let's go to the committee on accessible transportation, as we know as CAT report. Dr. Bethel.
Good morning, Mr. President.
Good morning.
Board of Directors. Yes, there was quite a change in this agenda this morning, so I'm going to get to finish my coffee before we get all that. But for the CAT report, you should have copies, board members should have copies before them. General regular meeting as we came back to begin from our summer break into September, looked at some issues, particularly that around the safety on the transit lines and that. It's been a good number of people apple picking. Apple picking is where they are taking Apple products, your iPhones and your iPads, and doing those in quickly, scanning at the doors and making sure getting way out. So we tried to do that, and the transit police gave us good information on that, so how to keep our riders safe. So with that, if there's any other questions anyone might have, we'll be glad to answer those and summarize our report.
Thank you, Dr. Bethel. Appreciate that. Any questions of Dr. Bethel? All right, then let's move on to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee.
Good morning, Consuelo Zaragoza. We had a meeting last week which was very interactive, and the three areas that we talked about was discussion regarding public participation in our meetings and what that would look like. And the chair and Janelle Bell, equity director, are going to take that back and look at that and bring some recommendations to the next meeting, which is next month. Secondly, we talked also about the extended time for the submittal of the FTA Title VI report because we would like to see more public input and engagement, and I believe that has been granted, and we'll get more information on that next month at the meeting. And lastly, we had a great discussion, small group discussion on equity indicators and what that looks like in terms of as we look at changes, the possibility of transit in the TriMet area. What does that look like? What are the indicators that we're looking at to make some decisions and going forward with that? So we had a very good discussion about that as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Board Member Zaragoza? Seeing none, okay. Move on. Director Prosser, can you give us a report on the Metro Policy Advisory Committee?
Right. The last meeting of the Metro Policy Advisory Committee approved the Regional Active Transportation Plan, and I'd say a little bit of hesitation. It is a plan that has received endorsement from MPAC and from all the other advisory bodies that basically lays out the region's goals for encouraging and supporting active transportation. Metro is approaching this in a little different manner, though. We got the endorsement, and it's there, is out there for use and to help guide activities, but it won't be formally adopted until Metro adopts the new version of the Regional Transportation Plan, which will be in 7 months. So it's basically a preliminary approval. Tonight, MPAC is meeting, and one of the primary items on the agenda will be getting an update on the Southwest Corridor plan that's underway, looking at improved transit options in the Southwest Corridor, which is basically the Barber 99W corridor. So it'll be interesting to see what they have to report.
There will be a board report. Okay. Any questions for Director Prosser? Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. You're still on tap here. We're going to go to the Finance and Audit Committee report as the new chair, Director Prosser.
Right, and we welcomed our new member, Travis Stovall, so we didn't seem to scare him off, so that was good. So looking forward to his participation. The primary purpose of the meeting this week was to hear from our auditors who have completed the financial audit this year. We've got, actually, this year's very glowing report. I won't go into a lot of detail because they're here and they're going to be given the report directly, so it's better that you hear it directly from the source rather than my interpretation of it. But I was very encouraged that it was an audit that was done very expeditiously, and it was a clean report, and I think that is a tribute to the finance staff and folks, here on staff, at other folks here on staff, TriMet, but also the working ability to work with the auditors. I think that was very good. I think it's also worth noting that part of the meeting, this is an annual meeting with the Finance Committee. Part of that meeting, we do excuse all staff in the room, so the committee has a chance to talk directly to the auditors without any influence or staff. So it gives us our chance to talk about any concerns, anything else that we felt need to be go into a little bit more detail. We had none of those, so again, it was a very good meeting and very positive.
I agree. Any questions on those? You will be getting, as you started, a full report on the audit here shortly. Okay, seeing none, let's move on to the final piece of work, and maybe there's a tag team here. Director Prosser and Stovall are the new members, or make up the new strategic finance plan subcommittee of the board. So if you could give us a quick update on that.
Okay. Actually, this is just an update on the committee, or do you want the?
It's on the strategic finance plan.
Yeah. Just want to check and make sure there's.
Yeah.
I think I'm doing fine. We are continuing work on the strategic finance plan. Last meeting we did present our roadmap, which Travis, I don't have one in front of me, so Travis can wait in front of you there. Thank you. So now we're beginning to talk about specific elements of the plan. So today we're really going to focus on the payroll tax and fare box revenues, which is the green revenue portion. And just as a reminder to everybody, we are on track to adopt this plan on November 27th. We do have information available on the website, and as I say, we're trying to get some more discussion going on this, and we'll spend a large portion of the board retreat on the 17th doing this. We do encourage testimony on the plan at our next board meeting, which is the 23rd. We also encourage people to submit written comments. So please move forward with that. The main questions that we're looking at here is, what is required to ensure that current revenues are adequate in perpetuity to maintain services, and how does TriMet pay for the system growth required to meet regional expectations? And the region does have very substantial expectations if you look at the climate smart communities plans and that type of thing. So in looking at payroll tax revenue will grow as the region goes. It's based on employment growth. So there is a correlation between employment growth and population growth. And in the proposed plan, we're talking, one of the questions we really wanted to address is whether we should dedicate a portion of the payroll tax and fare box revenue, which results from employment growth, to keep TriMet service proportional to the regional population. We haven't had such a policy in the past, and I think one of the challenges we always face is how to keep our service levels at a level that can support the growth of the region. So, the questions we put these questions out before: should payroll tax growth resulting from employment growth be dedicated to restoring and expanding service, or should the revenue gain from increased ridership be dedicated to restoring and expanding service? The other questions is, should we create a separate reserve fund or expand our existing fund balance policy target to smooth out fluctuations in the operating revenues? And we've just been through a downturn in the business cycle, and we saw what the impact was on TriNet. We don't want to go through that again, and one way to do that is to build a rainy day reserve. If we don't do that, the other choice is to allow service levels to fluctuate with currently available resources. And there are certainly organizations that do that. It's not one that, of course, that I personally would advocate, but that's an option. So, I was going to say, we are looking at some information comparing the growth in payroll tax revenues to underlying inflation rates. So that's something we're going to be paying attention to in the next couple of meetings of the subcommittee. So, Travis, have you got anything else you want to add?
Certainly. I just want to basically highlight, everything that Director Prosser was just going through is a process that, as an organization, we need to go through. We need to take a look at. This strategic financial plan is something that, as an organization, we need to take this long-term approach. I believe you have access to the strategic plan packet. We also have some documents and information online that allow you to go and kind of get some background on what we're doing here. TriMet's faced with a couple of different issues. We're faced consistently with acute challenges, things that happen on an ongoing basis that may happen only once or twice. Those are challenges that we have with our budget that we address, we look at, and we work to fix. Then we have more chronic challenges in regards to the OPEB, the long-term liabilities, in regards to our unfunded liabilities of issues there. And then we've got other challenges that we've spoke about and we've talked about. Well, we're taking the opportunity now as a board and as an organization to really take a long-term approach to some of these challenges on the chronic side. What are some of these long-term challenges? But we're wanting to do this with everybody's input as we move forward to make these decisions. There are various things that are on the table, improvements in service, both short-term and long-term. We've got ideas in regards to increasing the transfer times as a way to assist and help and grow our system. So there's various things that we're looking at that go into kind of this strategic financial plan. But we're really taking the opportunity to take a step back. And as you see, this plan that you see on here and the plan that you may have in your hand is a very aggressive time frame and a timeline to be able to address something that have been probably a long time in preparation to ensure that we can address some of these key things that we're facing. The questions that we have in our list are big questions. They're not small questions, and these are questions that have tremendous implications, not just for the organization, but for service and the ability for people to move around the entire district in a way that allows them to get the things done that they need to get done. So we really want to gain this input. Again, we have various ways to do that, but we do have information online. The key thing that we're talking about today, and we want to get some, we want to have a little bit of discussion here at the board level, and allow everyone else to also listen in on some of the things that we're dealing with, is the payroll tax issue. Should payroll tax growth resulting from employment growth be dedicated to restoring and expanding service? Now, on the surface, that question seems pretty straightforward. I mean, someone can say, well, yes, we should do that. But there are other things that we have to take a look at. We have to take a look at things like inflation. What is inflation doing? What are our underlying costs of delivering services to you, our customers? What's that underlying cost doing? What are our underlying costs doing? What are the costs, the general costs, which sometimes we refer to as CPI, Consumer Price Index? What are those inflation numbers doing? And how does that impact our ability to take those additional revenues from employment growth and put those into new service? And how does that impact us both short-term and long-term? We had an opportunity to begin the discussion at the Finance Committee where we were talking specifically about this piece of it. And we looked at a lot of different things that feed into this. But really, the question comes down to, should we take those additional dollars and move them in the new service, or should there be some way that we take those dollars And it's going to be kind of another portion of number 1 and number 4, the reserve funds. So TriMet create a separate reserve fund to expand its fund balance, policy targets. Those are tangential. They kind of go together. Because some of those, because you would ask, what would you do with those additional dollars? Well, some of those additional dollars would then go into a reserve so that as if our economy, as it did in 2008, 2009, takes another dive, at that point in time, we can maintain a level of service and maintain expectations of what people have for the system. And so leveling out our services rather than seeing the peaks and valleys that we've seen historically. And so these are the types of conversations and discussions that lead into the strategic financial plan. So it's very, very important that we get feedback as we go throughout this process. So with that, I mean, from Director Prosser and I, we've had an opportunity to kind of start to talk about this, and we're not looking for a long verbose discussion, but essentially getting some additional feedback at this level in regards to whether or not that's a direction that the board is interested in going in.
So you're asking some questions here. I guess I would open the floor for comments and questions from any of the board members here. Am I seeing any here that would like to try to answer that question? Do I need to call on people?
Well, I would just
Director
say,
Zaragoza, please.
yes, I would just say it's obviously a good idea. There's been a lot of thought, and I know it's been, this has been something that's been in the works for quite a while, and it looks to the future of TriMet, and I think that we need to do it.
This is the first I've really had to look at it, so right now, no. I know there's a concern in the business community about better service. I've heard that more than once. So. And there's also big concerns about the transfer times. So here we go. We're going to balance everything. But thanks for your work, you guys.
We'll say we will be talking about this again at our next meeting, briefing on the 9th. We have requested a substantial block of time at our retreat on the 17th, and I would expect that that's really where we're going to get into hammering out the details and getting something that we can then present to the public by the 25th of October. And again, so we can start having that out there so folks can look at it, can think about it, can respond, come to us with comments and questions. Again, all moving towards doing the final adoption on November 27th. Again, it is an aggressive timeline, but it's something that's been needed for a very long time. And this will set us up for this next year's budget process very nicely. It will kind of set the framework, and staff will know how to put the budget proposal together.
Mr. President, and to the team, I think, yes, we do need to do this analysis and have a plan together. My question becomes at this point, as I look on page 2, there are a set of questions of the 5 particular things. Board member Travis added some other scenarios. And so at this point, I'm not really clear what's being asked. Is this being asked, or is there more being asked by what he said? So my question or my request would you refine what you're asking us as a board to look at, and it includes some of those scenarios, to actually have that there too, so we can have it in writing to make that consideration.
Okay. And actually, where we are at this point in the process is it is very much a work in progress, and so we can do exactly what you're asking, and that's in fact why we're here trying to elicit questions and comments. So, I'm looking at Dave. Hoping he got all of that down, and sorry, Travis, I wasn't taking those. and we will. The plan is to keep this discussion draft current and get that out on keep the web page updated and certainly get information to the board members.
Well, and ideally, Dr. Bethel, the the opportunity for us to continue to discuss this as we go along is going to be very important, because ultimately, again, with this aggressive type of time schedule, our goal is to continue to make sure the board is having the dialogue and has the ability to do what you just said, and give feedback to us to make sure that as we go through this process, we are going to be able to deliver any types of additional information that you need as we go about the process. So my additional comments or scenarios were kind of examples upon the question of should payroll tax resulting, and we'll be talking about kind of each of these over this time period to ensure that, you know, as we get to the decision points, the board has had an opportunity to ask some of those critical questions, and also the public. It's a much better opportunity, much better insight to ask the questions that may come up in their minds, either through, you know, electronic versions or through public comments. So this really is that opportunity to start putting this out so that we all have this ability to give input and feedback, and then we as a committee can make sure that we're responding to those requests for any additional comments or information.
Okay.
This work has been very ably staffed by Dave Oxier and Sandy Vinci. They're doing great work helping us. Dave, is there anything you would want to add at this point?
Well, thank you, both Director Prosser and Stovall. This is good work, and I like Director Esmond, have heard pretty loudly and clearly from business and citizens that they want service restored, they want service expanded, and we need to figure out how to start accomplishing it. And we need to start looking to the future. But I also recognize what you said, Director Stovall, we want to do it in a way that's thoughtful and with a long-term view, so we don't end up putting service on the road and then 2 years later have to cut it back because of some of the projections. So I think we need to be smart about it, and I look forward to a detailed discussion next meeting and also during our retreat, because we have a number of challenges facing us, and this is just one of them. So again, I think you've done a good job teeing up this issue for us and for the public, and I look forward to making some good decisions as a result of this financial foundation prepared for us. So again, thank you. Anything else? No. Okay. Now, Mr. General Manager.
Mr. Board President, members of the board, I'll keep my remarks relatively brief, but I do have a number of introductions to make as we have some other reports from the auditors and other members of the staff that you'll see. Let me begin with the quarterly ridership report. I would note that overall system ridership was down about 5%, with weekday bus ridership down about 3.5%, and again, max down about 7.4% compared to 2012. And again, that change, particularly for max ridership, was primarily focused on the elimination of the free rail zone downtown. So we're obviously interested in beginning to compare like to like in terms of fare system and the elimination of free rail zone beginning September 1st of this year. We don't have any of those numbers in yet, but we'll be very interested in that. I would note there are a couple of bright spots. I'm proud to say that West ridership set new records last quarter, 10.3% over the previous year. The ridership actually averaged 1,930 rides per weekday this past June and August. So again, we're continuing to see growth in the ridership of that service. And we also saw, on the bus side, we saw encouraging weekend ridership growth as well. So again, we'll continue to update you on that, the effects of the free rail zone, and again, the general comparison with the first quarter starting September 1st. So we'll see those here in the next few months. I wanted to also note that last March, staff briefed you when we were meeting in Hillsborough on the West Side Service Enhancement Plan. We now have a published version, both that we can hand out in the physical sense, but it's also on the web. That document is in front of you, and we're again continuing to work with our stakeholders. Last week I spoke to 2 groups of stakeholders about the plan, received very positive feedback. Again, it's just reinforced the message that what our customers and constituents really want are more service, particularly in areas, growing areas like Washington County, where our service has not really changed for probably 15 years. I'd also just note that in September 1st, we implemented 2 of the recommendations from this plan, which had to do with the line 47 from Orenco up to PCC Rock Creek, serving the Intel campus as well as the New Kaiser Hospital, and frequency upgrades both to that line, line 47, and line 48 on Cornell. So we'll continue to update you on the progress that we made in the West Side Service Enhancement Plan, but again, I wanted to emphasize to you that we have really 3 areas underway in terms of similar efforts that are patterned after what we did on the west side. We have a service enhancement plan underway for the southwest sector of the region. We also have a service enhancement plan underway for the east side, really east of I-205, looking at that sector of the region. And by the end of this year, we'll be beginning service planning for the opening of the Port of Milwaukee Light Rail project in Clackamas County. So we'll be looking at much of the rest of the region over the next few months. I also wanted to give you a quick update on mobile ticketing. As of 8 a.m. this morning, we had 25,000 downloads from Apple and Android stores. So 25,000 people now have the app. We've had $250,000 in ticket sales, and on the order of 58,000 tickets sold. So we're continuing to see quite widespread adoption, and the reports I get from many of our operators who are beginning to see it much more often and are really frankly appreciating the clarity and the work that went into developing those flash passes for their review. And so, Mr. President, that concludes my remarks. Unless there are questions from the board, what I'd like to do is ask our auditors to come forward.
Let's check to see if there's questions.
This is a quick question on the, with any new system that comes out, especially electronic and software based, I mean, there's always going to be hiccups. And there's really no standard as to how many hiccups happen or issues come up. But are we seeing a fairly minimal level of things that are coming up with the actual app, or is it something, I see Sheldon nodding, it's minimal level, so.
Very minimal level, I would say. And you're right, these things are never perfect. We obviously did the beta test and tried a number of different stress tests on the app, and I think it all worked well. We're seeing, I think, relative from my anecdotal report from operators, very low levels of fraudulent use. You know, screenshot, we're worried about that. That doesn't seem to be widespread. And the other thing that I would say is that we have had a team in place between TriMet and Globe Sherpa to really respond as quickly as possible to any issues that do come up. And so we've been trying to communicate with the customers, particularly those who downloaded, as we sort of learn the little hiccups that might be, so that customers are alerted about that. But I think it's been a very minimal level.
What about the training on the people side? I mean, whenever there's a new technology, I mean, there's always a change in behavior understanding that's required. What types of things have we done in that regard with our own team as far as operators or some of our ticket folks?
So the operators did have sessions, if you will, related to that as at their garages, and the trainers are there available to provide that support on a day-to-day basis. We also did similar work, of course, with the fare inspection team, so that they know. And as you know, there are a number of security features built in, and the fare inspectors in particular need to understand that. And I would say that still is all, as you'd expect, a work in progress and something we have to continue to focus on.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes, please.
Speaking of that, applications in high tech, how are we doing with the largest high tech company in Oregon?
That would be
Are we working with them to?
We are working very, very closely with them. As a matter of fact, the Line 47 improvement that we were talking about really provides a very enhanced shuttle between the Orenco Max Station and their Runler Acres campus. And obviously serving that is really important to us. But we're also hitting a number of very other important destinations, such as the New Kaiser Hospital that opened in PCC Rock Creek with that service. So right now there's probably a bus, I think the statistic is every 9 minutes between the Orenco's Max platform and the Intel campus, between our service and the shuttle that they provide.
And would that smooth out once the construction ends? Or not smooth out, just...
I think the the patronage will change, obviously.
Well, yeah, I just,
One of the other things I would say that we're working very closely with them is bringing our buses onto their campus so that we're more convenient even for their workers. That wasn't possible this fall because they needed the space, frankly, for construction staging, given all the activities that are going on. But they're very amenable to that, and we're great working relationship with the Intel staff.
good. Thank you.
Any questions for the general manager? Let's bring our auditor.
So yes, if I could ask our auditors from Moss Adams to come up and give you a report on the recent audit. We're very, very pleased. Again, it was a clean report, as they'll share with you. So I'd like to welcome Julie Pizzamone and Nancy Young from Moss Adams.
Good morning, President Warner, members of the board. I do need to apologize. Julie Pizzamone actually wasn't able to be here this morning before your meeting was scheduled. She was booked to speak at a conference in Southern California, and she hasn't quite figured out how to be in two places at once. So it was myself and then Anne Marie McNeil.
It's sunny in California.
Yes. Right. We're here to talk to you about two things today. One is the results of our audit, and second is our required communications as required under professional standards. The first is the results of the audit. We have issued a clean opinion, and this year, instead of calling it an unqualified opinion, you now have an unmodified opinion. Apparently, this is going to mean more to you, so I hope it has done the trick. But it doesn't get any better than that, so congratulations. When it comes to your single audit, this is you received a lot of federal grants and have a long list of federal compliance requirements that you need to abide by and demonstrate that compliance. So we're pleased to report that there were no instances of non-compliance within that work. When it comes to your Oregon municipal standards, again, there's a long list of compliance requirements, and the element about the Oregon minimum standards is that one instance of non-compliance, you are out of compliance. So we're also pleased to report that there are no instances of non-compliance in regards to the Oregon municipal standards. Your 2001 revenue bond report, and there are also no instances of non-compliance identified. The final piece of the audit engagement is actually for TriMet to submit their data collection form to the Federal Clearinghouse, and the feds are working on that. They haven't quite gotten everything together as they've changed some parameters for the first time in a really long time. So that's still forthcoming, but we are working with TriMet's finance director to ensure that that is completed. Now I'm going to turn it over to Anne Marie and ask her to talk to you about our required communications.
So we have a few just required communications. Most of these are just standard communications to discuss with those charged with governance, the board. First is our audit responsibilities under the auditing standards. We performed your audit in accordance with government auditing standards. And again, you had a clean audit report. If there were any significant accounting policies or changes to those policies, we would be required to disclose those to you. There were no changes to the accounting policies that would be reportable, other than there are a couple of new ones that are required under Government Auditing Standards Board.
Yeah, so the GASB issued a couple new standards this year, which of course have impacted TriMet. One of those is GASB 63, and the second one is GASB 65. Regarding 65, you have early implemented, and we appreciate the efforts that the finance department has gone through to get all of their records in line to early implement. So what does that mean to you? When you look at the face of the financial statements last year, you saw something called net assets. Well, those standards have now changed. You're now going to see the terminology net position. In addition, you're no longer allowed to capitalize bond interest costs, and because of that, those have to be shown on the face of the statements. It's going to be a period cost, and your financial statements have been restated to so reflect that change. We do appreciate the efforts of the finance department and their leadership there in getting all of this information together and being an early implementer. So.
Additionally, another required communication is management's judgments and accounting estimates. So there's some sensitive areas that are on within the statements themselves. Depreciation of fixed assets would be one. Your OPEB costs, your other post-employment benefits. There's some estimates that go into making decisions on what that number will be at the end of the year. And those estimates we worked through with management and evaluating their estimates and assumptions used, and we came to the conclusion that those were reasonable. The balances stated for the fiscal year reasonably stated. Audit adjustments that were made and passed. All adjustments were made by the accounting department. We concurred with those, and there were none that were passed. We did not find anything that was significant to be reported that was passed on. Management's consultation with other accountants. Management is, of course, more than welcome to go get a second opinion if they so choose. To our knowledge, that did not occur, but we would be required to disclose it if it had occurred. Disagreements with management. Pleased to say we did not have any disagreements with management. Of course, we have ongoing discussions throughout the audit process, but no disagreements to report. Also, no difficulties in performing our audit. Everything went as planned, as we discussed in our engagement letter to the district. Major issues discussed with management prior to our retention. We discussed the new implementations of the new GASBs, but there was nothing unusual or significant that we would need to report to you. Audit observations, recommendations, or audit findings. Again, you have a clean audit report, and nothing came to our attention that would be significant to actually report to the board.
So that completes the information we wanted to share with you, and we just want to open up and see if there are any questions of us.
Okay, I think there may be some questions. From the board, anybody? Well, maybe I'm wrong.
I guess so.
I guess I would like to ask a question. You know, one of the things we get a lot of testimony about is our other post-employment benefits, OPEB. And I guess, again, what you said, we have a clean opinion. Obviously, this is going to be restated a bit in the future in terms of how that appears on the books. Maybe you could explain that for folks here. But I'm just curious how we look when you compare us to others in terms of those, you know, retirement and OPEB liabilities, and what things we could learn from what you've seen elsewhere.
Well, the best thing I can tell you is let's get that crystal ball out and talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. Of course, what happened with OPEB is that nobody anticipated that the GASB was going to change the rules and say, hey, we now want to see that liability on the face of your financial statements. But what they did is they looked at the implementation of that and said, okay, because of the level of that liability, we're going to give you a phased implementation. In other words, as each year goes by, you're going to have to show a little bit more of that liability on the face of your statements. Now, the full liability is disclosed in the notes to the financial statements, so there's nothing hidden here. The nice thing about TriMet is that you actually have a plan, and that management is monitoring and has their finger on the pulse of this. They have a long-term plan to make that liability, to catch it up, so that they are, I'm going to use the term fully funded. They're addressing that through, not only through the resources that they are dedicating to the liability, but as well as looking at what the ongoing future benefits would be, what the eligibility requirements should be to receive those benefits. In comparison to some other, governments, I can tell you that, Moss Adams audits a large number of governments, and there are some that are in horrible shape. They maybe have not funded their OPEB at all from the beginning of time. And some of them don't quite even have a plan in place yet to address this. So I would say that, in looking at TriMet, one of the things that we are watching very carefully is that OPEB liability, and we appreciate the efforts. The plan that you have in place, understand that it is a long-term correction. It's not going to be resolved overnight.
Good, thank you. That's a nice answer. Appreciate it. Anything else? Yes.
Now, I'm not quite sure if you said it, but you talked about a little bit about GASB, but ultimately we've got a portion of it showing now,
yes,
but then over time it'll go to where it's fully reflected.
Correct.
In our financial statements, correct, not just in the footnote. So that footnote every year we'll get a portion of that, and so that'll get reflected at some point in net assets.
Correct. As well as the resources that you're putting aside to address that liability.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions. First off, I want to thank you for your work and getting this done so quickly. I also want to express thanks to myself and the board for your efforts and the efforts of staff. I know that we wouldn't be here today having this unmodified, is that the correct term? Unmodified audit without good finances and people at the helm in our financial portions of the organization. So we appreciate the audit, we appreciate your information, and really did appreciate the time. The Finance and Audit Committee really dig into some of these issues in a little more detail. So thank you for coming today, and thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Again, my thanks to the auditors, but mostly to our finance staff for the great work they've done that led to this great report. Mr. Board President, if I might then invite Harry Secor out to give you a safety report.
Can he make noise with his voice? It sounded good the last time.
Well, but he has help, which is our manager of training, and this is a little report to you on our next round of bus operator recertification. And again, I want to thank the board for your support in providing the resources that allow us to bring our operators in for training every year. That was a decision made a couple of years ago to reflect by budgets, and it's been a very, very important part of our safety efforts overall.
Good morning. This morning I'd like to give you an overview of our bus recertification program, and what this really is an intensive process with each one of our operators. This year's program starts October 28th, and it actually extends to about 4 or 5 months, because that's how long it takes us to actually get through every one of our operators. There are 3 main goals from this training. One, obviously, is to promote safety. There's special emphasis placed on pedestrian and cyclist safety as well during these sessions. It's also to promote exceptional customer service. And then lastly, this is also an opportunity to update the operators on any special SOPs, or if there's been any changes to the driving regulations or the ADA requirements. If you recall, this program started in 2011, and at that time, that was when the concept of safety being not a priority, but rather it is a value, a core value within the agency. That was also a time when we began training operators how to scan, it's a defensive driving technique, more effectively. And then last year's program in 2012, we focused on managing the risks that an operator may encounter in their daily driving. And this year, the program is now emphasizing being predictive, and that's anticipating some of the hazards that might occur and taking the appropriate action. What I'd like to do now is have Alan actually explain a little bit more about the classroom session for this year, and also about the driving skills assessment that is performed of every one of our bus operators.
Good morning, I'm Alan Morgan, Manager of Operations Training at Trigon. And as Harry said, the focus of this certification program is safety. That's always the #1 goal. As part of that, each year, we do a morning presentation on safety reviewing skills. Harry just outlined those skills, such as scanning and reducing risks. But also, we go out, take drivers out on the road, and they receive coaching drives from their trainer, where the trainer gives them feedback, and their fellow drivers on the bus with them give them feedback. And then I believe we do something that's very unique in a yearly training program in our industry. We actually give them a very short skills assessment. It is based on the skills assessment that the state DMV uses for commercial drivers. We have 7 trainers who are state third-party certified driver's license examiners for the state of Oregon. And we use those same standards to give them a test, and for any operator needs additional help, then we go out and service with them and follow them up later with that help. So very excited about that. And that happens with every driver each year. The rest of the day, after we come back from the assessment drives and the coaching drives, is spent in the classroom, where we have a wide number of topics to cover that Harry talked about. That includes customer service, the ADA, other topics such as fatigue awareness, hours of service, distracted driving, distracted walking, which is now a phenomenon that our drivers are confronted with in many, many areas of the city. We talked also about very specific things, like this year we're going to, Harry and I and some others have spent some time with the folks at Fire Station 1 and talked about some difficulties they have there in getting out across the mall. So we will review that. And we also take this as an opportunity to get feedback from the drivers and let them give us their slant on what's happening. This year we're going to ask for feedback on mobile ticketing, how the fare printers are working, and how the new radio system is working, if there's any changes or upgrades we need to do there.
So with that, if you have any questions, we'd be pleased to answer those.
So, you said you used a third party for recertification?
I have 7 trainers who are
On staff?
7 of 17, actually, excuse me, 7 of 18, who are state certified third-party driver's license examiners. So we're also training a lot of new drivers right now. And rather than take time and take them to DMV and set up an appointment, the state allows us to do our own tests. So we have 7 examiners who examine for the state for TriMet employees. We use those same standards the state uses for their CDL tests or our driver's skills assessment.
And all these people are former drivers?
All of the trainers are former drivers.
Okay.
Other questions? There was nothing in the packet, was there?
No.
Yeah. In the future, since safety is one of the big issues for this board, it may be good to just get some of this information in the packet so we can have that ahead of time, be a little bit more prepared for you when you come here to talk about this.
So if you'd like, we could summarize what we spoke about this morning and provide that to you.
I'm here, I'm seeing some, that's not fine, so you very helpful. Good. Thank you.
Mr. President, there's one thing I'd just like to say. I just want to give my thanks and support for the safety and Neil's leading direction in that. We remember a couple of years back, we had quite a few things that were happening around with TriMet, and the question kept arising about safety and training of drivers, and to see how fast we responded to doing that and bringing online and continuing to make sure our drivers are well trained and certified for what they're doing. So I want to just give my appreciation for that.
All right. Now moving on. Update on the...
For the Milwaukee project, I'd like to invite Dan Walker up, and he's going to give you a little bit of an update. But just a quick snapshot for you is 51%, as Dan giving the notes, 51% complete. We're completing, I would say, in the next month and a half, our most disruptive activities, and I think we're going to be much easier on the community or our neighbors in the months and years ahead as we get to completion in 2015. Dan will also give you an update and a little context for the Moving Together action that's on the agenda later today. Dan?
Thank you. Good morning. Pleasure to be here today to give you just a very brief update on the Portland-Milwaukee project. Overall, I would just lead off by saying the project is going very well. We are really blessed with a terrific team of professionals from TriMet and contractors, our designers, our jurisdictional partners. Everybody's really on their game. They're out there solving problems every day. What we have are a number of what we call key performance indicators that we track to measure the success of the project. And what I'd like to do today is walk through those and just show you specifically how we're doing. So we'll start with safety. This chart here gives us a couple of measures of the safety performance of our contractors and their employee safety on the various contracts. So for each contract there is a blue bar, and that bar is a measure of what's called the recordable incident rate. Whenever somebody gets an injury of any type, whether it's a sprained finger,